Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our reading of Can You Forgive Her by Anthony Trollope. We are up to chapter 10, and for the last couple of chapters, we've been dealing with a comic interlude, a secondary character in the novel called Aunt Greenow. And it's had some good moments. It's been largely a lot of fun. We've gone there with Jane Vavasor, or Kate Vavasor, who is the first cousin of our main heroine, Alice Vavasor. And so for those chapters, while we've been with Aunt Greenow and Mr. Cheeseacre and Captain Belfield and whatnot, we have not had a chance to exercise our Alice Vavasor tolerating muscles. We haven't had a chance to do that. Anthony Trollope gave this title to this book because he knew after about halfway through the writing of the book that he was writing an utterly insufferable character. So rather than the Vavasors of Vavasor Hall or The Perfect Man and the Wild Man or any other title that he could have given this, he is asking you, the reader, the question that is going to be foremost on your mind. And now it's time to get those muscles back into shape because chapter 10 is leaving Aunt Greenow and moving on to that worthy man, John Grey. So this is a title titled Nethercoats, which we know already is the name of his country estate. Although his country estate, we gather, is not that large. Alice tells George that his estate does not qualify him to call himself a country squire. But it's likely, knowing Trollope, that a chapter called Nethercoats is going to tell us all about Nethercoats. We don't know anything about it, really, except that Alice has been there once. So this is chapter 10, Nethercoats. We will leave Mrs. Greenow with her niece and two suitors at Yarmouth, and returning by stages to London, we will call upon Mr. Grey at his place in Cambridgeshire as we pass by. I believe it is conceded by all the other counties that Cambridgeshire possesses fewer rural beauties than any other county in England. So it's bad enough we've been crapping on Yarmouth, now we're crapping on Cambridgeshire. It is very flat, and it is not well timbered, and the rivers are merely dikes, and in a very large portion of the county, the farms and fields are divided simply by ditches, not by hedgerows. Such arrangements are, no doubt, well adapted for agricultural purposes, but are not conducive to rural beauty. Mr. Grey's residence was situated in a part of Cambridgeshire in which the above-named characteristics are very much marked. It was in the Isle of Ely, some few miles distant from Cathedral Town, on the side of a long straight road which ran through the fields for miles without even a bush to cheer it. The name of his place was Nethercoats, and here he lived generally throughout the year, and here he intended to live throughout his life. So he is already, this is actually going to become important in the chapter. He has already made it known, everyone who knows him knows it, it's not like he's made a big point out of it, but it is well known that he does not have a house in town, that he doesn't like coming to town, and that he intends to spend his entire life at Nethercoats. His father had held a prebendal stall at Ely in times when prebendal stalls were worth more than they are at present, and having also been possessed of a living in the neighborhood, had amassed a considerable sum of money. With this he had during his life purchased the property of Nethercoats, and had built on it the house in which his son now lived. So this is not old property. The father bought it and built the house. He had married late in life and had lost his wife soon after the birth of an only child. So John Grey has no siblings. The house had been built in his own parish, and his wife had lived there for a few months and had died there. But after that event, the old clergyman had gone back to his residence in the close at Ely, and there John Grey had the home of his youth. He had been brought up under his father's eye, having been sent to no public school, but he had gone to Cambridge and had taken college honors, and had then, his father's dying exactly at that time, declined to accept a fellowship. His father had left him an income of some $1,500 a year, and with this he set himself down near to his college friends, near also to the old cathedral which he loved, in the house which his father had built. So unlike our previous hero in a Trollope novel, he's not going to become a fellow of his college. And unlike anyone at all in the world today, he got into Cambridge without going to school. But though Nethercoats possessed no beauty of scenery, though the country around it was in truth as uninteresting as any county could be, it had many delights of its own. The house itself was an excellent residence as a country gentleman of small means as taste and skill could construct. I doubt whether prettier rooms were ever seen than the drawing room, the library, and the dining room at Nethercoats. I wonder what's in the library. I wonder where it's situated. Oh, it'd be the only room that you or I would care about. They were all on the ground floor and all opened out onto the garden and lawn. The library, which was the largest of the three, was a handsome chamber, and so filled as to make it well known in the university as one of the best private collections in that part of England. But does John Gray read? Did his father read? But perhaps the gardens at Nethercoat constitute its greatest glory. They were spacious and excellently kept up, and had been originally laid out with that knowledge of gardening without which no garden, merely as a garden, can be effective. Thanks, Tony. That's insightful as all hell. As such, of necessity, was the gardens at Nethercoat. Fine single forest trees were none there, nor was it possible that there should have been any as such. Nor could there be a clear rippling stream with steep green banks or broken rocks lying about its bed. Such beauties are beauties of landscape, and do not of their nature belong to a garden. And Nethercoats needs a big, functioning garden, since it's all by itself, sitting there on the road. But the shrubs of Nethercoats were of the rarest kind, and had been long enough in their present places to have reached that period of their beauty. Nothing had been spared that a garden could want. The fruit trees were perfect in their kind, and the glass houses were so good and so extensive that John Gray, in his prejudice, was sometimes tempted to think that he had too much of them. It must be understood that there were no grounds, according to the meaning usually given to that word, belonging to the house at Nethercoats. Between the garden and the public road there was a paddock belonging to the house, alongside of which, but divided from it by a hedge and shrubbery, ran the private carriageway up to the house. This swept through the small front flower garden, dividing it equally, but the lawns, and indeed the whole of that which made the beauty of the place, lay on the back of the house, on which side opened the windows from the 3 sitting rooms. Down on the public roads there stood a lodge at which lived one of the gardeners. There was another field of some 6 or 7 acres, to which there was a gate from the corner of the front paddock, and which went round 2 sides of the garden. This was Nethercoats, and the whole estate covered about 12 acres. This was not a place for much bachelor enjoyment of that sort generally popular with bachelors. Nevertheless, Mr. Gray had been constant in his residence there for 7 years, which had now elapsed since he had left his college. His easy access to Cambridge had probably done much to mitigate what might otherwise have been too great a tedium of his life. He's got a fantastic library. We were just told that. Where's the tedium? And he had, prompted thereto by early associations, found most of his society in the close of the cathedral. But, with all the delight that he could derive from these 2 sources, there had still been many solitary hours in his life, and he had gradually learned to feel that he of all men wanted a companion in his house. Get a dog. Get a couple of dogs. Every introvert who's listening to me is thinking, oh my God, you own this thing and the money to upkeep it, and you have a huge library and no one bothers you? It's heaven. His visits to London had generally been short and far between, occasioned probably by some need in the library, or by the necessity of some slight literary transaction with the editor or publisher of a periodical. In one of these visits he had met Alice Vavasor and had remained in town. I will not say till Alice had promised to share his home in Cambridgeshire, but so long as he had resolved that before he went he would ask her to do so. What is this? Never mind about his romance. Get back to this business about some light literary transaction with the editor or publisher of a periodical. What does that mean? Are you telling me that he writes and publishes in addition to having a great library and a private home? And he's still not satisfied? Get a dog. Get several dogs. Just little word of advice. Not basset hounds. He had asked her, and we know that he had been successful. He had attained her promise, and from that moment all his life had been changed for him. Hitherto at Nethercoats, his little smoking room, his books, and his plants had been everything to him. Now he began to surround himself with an infinity of feminine belongings, and to promise himself an infinity of feminine blessings, wondering which he should choose to have been content to, wondering much that he should have been content to pass so long a portion of his life in dull seclusion which he had endured. He was not by nature an impatient man, but now he became impatient, longing for the fruition of his new idea of happiness, longing to have that as his own which he certainly loved beyond all else in the world, and which perhaps was all he ever loved with the perfect love of equality. But though impatient, and fully aware of his own impatience, he acknowledged to himself that Alice could not be expected to share it. He could plan nothing now, could have no pleasure in life that she was not expected to share, but as yet it could not be so with her. She had her house in London, her town society, and her father. And inasmuch as the change for her would be much greater than it would be for him, it was natural that she should require some small delay. Notice, he has already thought all of this. He is already aware of the fact that he's asking her to change her whole world while he is changing nothing except adding her to his world. So much for perfect equality, by the by. But keep in mind, for what comes later in the chapter, that he knows this. He's aware of what he's asking. She had her house. We already know that. And inasmuch as the change for her would be much greater than it was for him, it was natural that she should require some small delay. He had not pressed her. At least he had not pressed her with an eager pressure which a girl must resist with something of an opposition of a contest, if she resisted at all. But in truth, his impatience was now waxing strong, and during the absence in Switzerland, of which we have spoken, he resolved that a marriage very late in the autumn, that a marriage even in winter, would be better than a marriage postponed till the following year. It was not yet late in August when the party returned from their tour. Would not further delay of 2 months suffice for his bride? Get ready. Get those "can you forgive her" muscles in trim shape. Alice had written to him occasionally from Switzerland, and her first 2 letters had been very charming. They had referred almost exclusively to the tour, and had been made pleasant with some slightly colored accounts of George Vavasor's idleness and of Kate's obedience to her brother's behest, which is pretty much what Mr. Grey predicted. Right? Remember, he predicted that George would not be their slave. If anything, the opposite. Alice had never written much of love in her love letters, and Grey was well enough contented with her style, though it was not impassioned. As for doubting her love, it was not in the heart of a man to do so after it had been once assured to him by her word. He could not so slightly respect himself or her to leave room for such a doubt in his bosom. He was a man who could never have suggested to himself that a woman loved him till the fact was there before him, but who, having ascertained, as he might think, the fact, could never suggest himself that her love would fail him. Her first 2 letters from Switzerland had been very pleasant, and after that there had seemed to have crept over her a melancholy which she unconsciously transferred to her words, and which he could not but taste in them. At first unconsciously, also, but soon with a pain of flavor that he recognized it, and made it a matter of mental inquiry. During the 3 or 4 last days of the journey, while they were at Basel and on their way home, she had not written. And we know why. Because George Vavasor has raked up everything that was ever between them, saying while he was doing it that he wasn't doing it and that he wanted nothing from it. But she did write on the day after her arrival, having then received from Mr. Grey a letter in which he told her how very much she would add to his happiness if she would now agree that their marriage should not be postponed beyond the end of October. This letter she found in her room on her return, and this she answered at once. And she answered it in such words that Mr. Grey resolved that he would go at once to her in London. I will give her a letter at length, and I shall then be best able to proceed with my story very quickly. And here Trollope is playing a little bit of a game with his readers. He's saying, well, I'll give the letter very quickly because, we've got to go on with the story. I'm sorry. He's almost apologizing. I'm sorry to include this little bit of documentation, but we've got to go on. When he knows already what all of his readers knew even by this point in his career, which is that his letters are superb. In a Trollope novel, you wait for characters to correspond with each other. And this is the letter that Alice writes to John. Dearest John, it's written from Queen Anne Street in August of 1860 whatever. We reached home yesterday, tired enough, and as we came through from Paris without stopping, I may indeed say that we came through from Strasbourg, as we only slept in Paris. I don't like Strasbourg. A steeple, after all, is not everything, a famous steeple in Strasbourg. And putting the steeple aside, I don't think the style is good. But the hotel was uncomfortable, which goes for so much. And then we were saturated with beauty of a kind. I got your letter directly as I came last night, and I suppose I had better dash at it at once. I would so willingly delay doing so, since saying nice little things the while, did I not know that this would be mere cowardice. Whatever happens, I won't be a coward, and therefore I will tell you at once that I cannot let you hope that we should be married this year. Of course you will ask me why, as you have a right to do, and of course I am bound to answer. I do not know that I can give any answer which you will not have any right to complain. If it be so, I can only ask your pardon for the injury I am doing you. Marriage is a great change in life, much greater to me than to you, who will remain in your old house and will keep your old pursuits, will still be your own master and will change in nothing except in this, that you will have a companion who will probably may not be all that you expect. But I must change everything. It will be to me as though I were passing through a grave to a new world. Well, you make this marriage sound so attractive. I shall see nothing that I have been accustomed to see, and must abandon all the ways of life that I had hitherto adopted. Of course, I should have thought of this before I accepted you, and I did think of it. I made up my mind that, as I truly loved you, I would risk the change, that I would risk it for your sake and for mine, hoping that I might add something to your happiness, and that I might secure my own. Dear John, do not suppose that I despair that it may be so, but indeed you must not hurry me. I must tune myself to the change which I have to make. What if I should wake some morning after 6 months living with you and tell you that the quiet of your home was making me mad? And you know that it would. We'll see. The one thing you could say clearly is that these two should not marry, which is going to make a little bit of a bother with the 1,000 pages that we have to go. But let's keep going with her letter. You must not ask me again till the winter should have passed away. If in the meantime I shall find that I have been wrong, I will humbly confess that I have wronged you and ask you to forgive me. And I will freely admit this: if the delay which I now propose is so contrary to your own plans as to make your marriage under such circumstances not what you have expected, I know that you are free to tell me so, and to say that our engagement shall be over. I am well aware that I can have no right to bind you to a marriage at one period which you had only contemplated as to take place at another period. I think I may promise that I will obey any wish you may express in anything, except that one thing which you've urged in your last letter. Well, yeah, the one thing that he wants. He's not really interested in your opinions on the latest China. Kate is going down to Yarmouth with Mrs. Greenough, and I shall see no more of her probably till next year, as she will be due in Westmoreland after that. George left me at the door when he brought me home, and declared that he intended to vanish out of London. Whether in town or out, he is never to be seen at this period of the year. Papa offers to go to Ramsgate for a fortnight, but he looks so wretched that when he makes the offer that I shall not have the heart to hold him to it. Lady Macleod very much wants me to go to Cheltenham. I very much want not to go, simply because I can never agree with her about anything, but it will probably end up in my going there for a week or two. Over and beyond that, I have no prospects before Christmas which are not purely domestic. There is a project that we shall all eat our Christmas dinner at Vavasor Hall, of course not including George, who's not speaking with the master of the hall at the moment, but this project is quite in the clouds, and as far as I'm concerned, will remain there. Dear John, let me hear that this letter does not make you unhappy. Most affectionately yours, Alice Vavasor. Okay, got those muscles back in order. She has told him, for no reason that she's willing to confess, that she wants to put their wedding off half a year, until next year, when he was hoping that they would set a date before she went on her vacation. John Grey is not happy with this at all. Of course, she knows that it's going to make him unhappy. At Nethercoats, the post was brought in at breakfast time, and Mr. Grey was sitting with his tea and eggs before him when he read Alice's letter. He read it twice before he began to think of what he ought to do in regard to it, and then referred to one or two other things which he received from Switzerland, reading them also very carefully. After that, he took up the slouch hat which he had been wearing in the garden before he was called to his breakfast, and with the letters in hand sauntered down among the shrubs and lawns. He thought he knew, that there was more in Alice's mind than a mere wish for delay. There was more in them than hesitation to take at once a step which she really desired to take, if not now, then after some short interval. He felt that she was unhappy, and unhappy because she distrusted the results of her marriage. But it never for a moment occurred to him that therefore the engagement between them should be broken. In the first place, he loved her too well to allow of his admitting such an idea without terrible sorrow to himself. He was a constant, firm man, somewhat reserved and unwilling to make new acquaintances, and therefore especially unwilling to break away from those which he had made. Undoubtedly, had he satisfied himself that Alice's unhappiness demanded such a sacrifice of himself, he would have made it, and made it without a word of complaint. The blow would not have prostrated him, but the bruise would have remained on his heart, indelible, not to be healed but by death. He would have submitted, and no man would have seen that he had been injured. But it did not once occur to him that such a proceeding on his own part would be beneficial to Alice. Without being aware of it, he reckoned himself to be the nobler creature of the two, and now thought of her as the one wounded and wanting a cure. Some weakness had fallen on her, and strength must be given her from another. So here, for no reason whatsoever, right away, he has the freshly read letter in his hand, down in the shrubbery. Right away, he decides that if Alice Vavasor is putting off being married to him, she must be sick. Physically sick. He did not in the least doubt her love, but he knew that she had been associated for weeks past with two persons whose daily conversation would be prone to weaken the tone of her mind. He no more thought of giving her up than a man thinks of having his leg cut off because he has sprained his sinews. He would go up to town and see her, and would not even yet abandon all hope that she might be found sitting at his board with Christmas should soon come. By that day's post he wrote a short note to her. "Dearest Alice," he said, "I have resolved to go to London at once. I will be with you in the evening at 8, the day after tomorrow. Yours, J.G." There was no more to the letter than that. "And now," she said when she received it, "I must dare to tell him the whole truth." So there we have chapter 10, where Alice Vavasor writes to John Grey and says, I know I said once I got back we'd start talking about setting a date, but now I'm back from my vacation, and I'm saying not this year. I know it's still only August, but not this year. And don't press me on it. And I hope this doesn't make you unhappy. When she knows that's going to make him unhappy, and she also knows that he's going to press her on it. So he has told her, "I'm coming to town." Implicit, be there, and I will have this out. And that's what will come of it. We've divested ourselves of most of the rest of the cast, so we'll see what comes in the next chapter. Thank you, BookTube.